Right, hi guys. Today we're going to be talking about Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Liveship Traders trilogy, which is actually the fourth book in her sort of wider Realm of the Elderlings universe. The Farseer trilogy, which I read recently, is the first trilogy in that larger series. And this is a fantasy series, but really it's like it's more of a family drama, this book. And much of it focuses on the Vestrit family, who are a family of traders, that's traders with a capital T, who basically make up the sort of wealthy merchant elite of a place called Bingtown. Now, the wealth of the traders is primarily based on their sort of unique use of things called live ships. And live ships are ships that are made of a material called wizard wood. And after a certain amount of time, the wizard wood becomes sentient. And that amount of time, in the case of these ships, is when 3 generations of a family have died on their deck. And the Vestrit family owns one of these live ships, and we sort of start the story just when it's on the cusp of awakening. Because the patriarch of the family, a guy called Ephron, who has captained the ship for most of his life, his health is now failing. Now, clearly, this is a stressful time for any family, dealing with the failing health of one of their members. And that's without the added dimension of having to deal with the birth of a magic ship. But on top of that, the Vestrits are also having to deal with the fact that they are struggling financially. And this book, Ship of Magic, basically explores how this whole situation pretty much brings the Vestrit family to the brink of self-destruction. And there's also a few subplots running alongside this that don't have a huge impact throughout this book, but you feel like they are definitely going to have more of an impact as the trilogy progresses. So there's this pirate captain, Kenneth, who wants to capture a live ship and make himself into like a pirate king. There's also a live ship Paragon who's been beached for 30 years because at one point in the past it went mad and killed all its crew. And then there's these sea serpents who are point of view characters as well. And they have a very mysterious agenda. Don't really know what's going on with them yet. So, Ship of Magic, is it any good? Now, this book had a lot to live up to because I had some pretty high expectations going into it. As I say, I read the Farseer trilogy recently and I really enjoyed that. But even though this book is very different in some pretty important ways, I'm happy to say that I very much enjoyed this one as well. So yeah, with the Farseer trilogy in mind, one of the first things that I sort of noticed when I picked the book up was that this is written in the third-person limited perspective rather than the first-person POV that was used in the Farseer books. Now, personally, I generally prefer a first-person narrative, but I also understand that the third person allows the writer to do a few sort of different things. You can have multiple point-of-view characters in multiple locations, getting like multiple internal monologues, and generally sort of broadening the scope of the story in terms of how many characters can be explored in depth. And Hobb absolutely uses that to maximum effect, and the quality of her character writing is just brilliant. Watching the Vestrit family basically rip itself apart following the death of Ephron is like horribly compelling reading, as like all of their decisions, even though they're completely consistent with the characters' motivations, all end up contributing to their downfall. Now, I wouldn't say that there are any particularly likeable characters in this book. Certainly some are more sympathetic than others, but none of them are like out and out likeable. We get a lot of page time with Althea, who is Ephron's daughter, and she's been sailing on the live ship with him for years. She expected the live ship to go to her after Ephron died, but it doesn't. So basically, she just kind of throws a tantrum and runs away. We also spend a lot of time with Wintro, who is the son of Althea's older sister Keffria, and her husband Kyle Haven, who is just like a generally all-around nasty piece of work. Now, Wintro was given to the church when he was younger, but when the live ship passes to his father Kyle, he's forced to join the crew because when Althea runs away, you always need to have someone with the family blood on the ship. So because he's the son of Keffria, he's got the Vestrit blood, so he is the substitute for Althea that needs to be on the ship. Because magic. And Wintro basically just gets dumped on for the whole book. Like, loads bad stuff happens to him. Some of it is not his fault at all. A lot of it is not his fault at all. But there is a lot of it that he brings on himself as well. So yeah, I think Althea and Wintro are the closest we get really to sort of sympathetic characters. And they're the ones I think that we're supposed to be rooting for. Even though they both have some pretty annoying characteristics, but I think Hobb's genius as a writer is that even though these characters can be pretty annoying, you still are, completely invested in them and in seeing their growth and how their stories progress. Now, I can't go into all the characters because there's like a ton of them in this, and the review would be like an hour long. But I do think it's worth mentioning Keffria. Like I say, she's the oldest daughter of Ephron, Althea's older sister. Now, she is the sort of like timid, downtrodden oldest daughter who basically has no respect from anyone. And she's the kind of character that I wouldn't normally enjoy reading. But by the end of it, I was really enjoying her character growth. She wins these sort of like minor victories, gaining a bit more respect in dealing with her bratty daughter, Malta, and with her sort of well-meaning but domineering mother, Ronica. But yeah, anyway, another difference from the Farseer trilogy is the setting. Although this is ostensibly set in the same world as the Six Duchies, which is where all of the Farseer trilogy takes place, and it does receive news from there, whatever. That's as far as the connection goes. And actually, it's a completely different feel to it in this book. The sort of culture of Bingtown and the surrounding sort of maritime region really reminds me of sort of Central America and the Caribbean at the start of the sort of golden age of piracy, except with like magic instead of gunpowder. It's a pretty interesting period of history, and it gives the book a really cool swashbuckling feel that I really liked. I mean, I could go on and on about all the sort of ways that this book is great. Thematically, it's really strong. It deals with issues like slavery, like loss. It deals with family discord and the pressure of expectations. Hobb's writing style is great. The set pieces are exciting, etc., etc. I'd be here all day. But I will just mention a couple of criticisms that I've seen in other reviews, some of which I agree with and some of which I don't so much. First up, Kyle Haven, right? Kyle Haven is the worst. I hate him. And I know that is what Hobb was trying to achieve. That's what she wants you to feel about this character. And she's nailed that. She's absolutely nailed that. But it's a bit over the top. And this is a criticism that I can definitely get behind. I think, the guy is a complete arse, and there is no way that his wife, Keffria, and his in-laws, Ephron and Ronica, wouldn't have seen this before they gave him the live ship, and it was too late. There's no way he could have hidden it. So yeah, I can definitely get behind that criticism. And actually, that was the weakest aspect of the book for me, and it's the one poor bit of character writing I think that Hobb has done in this book, and in fact in the Farseer trilogy. It's the first example I think I've got of some slightly off character writing from Hobb. But the rest of it is great. I think he just needed a redeeming feature or just a slightly more explicit motivation for acting like he does throughout the book, without spoiling it. And secondly, in terms of criticisms, the book is, one that I've seen is that the book's too long and not enough plot happens. And this is something that it's kind of two separate issues, but I'm going to lump them together because I do kind of disagree with them, and I disagree with them for basically the same reason. This is a family drama, and in the main, and it is very much about the characters and their interactions and their development and how that affects each other, and the page time in it's a long book, nearly 900 pages, but to get to know those characters as well as you do, you really need that amount of time. And I don't mind if a book. I didn't want to put this book down for the whole length of it, so I don't mind if a book is long if I'm enjoying it. In fact, that's a plus point as far as I'm concerned. And as I say, I think you really did need it to get as in depth in the characters as Hobb manages. And that character focus means that the plot is going to take a bit more of a backseat. I mean, plenty of stuff happens in the book. It's just quite spread out over a very long book. So that's what I kind of think about that issue. And some people might disagree. That's fine. But anyway, yeah. So that's my review. Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I really enjoyed this book, and I've got the next two books in, to finish off this trilogy, and I'm definitely going to be getting onto them next month, I think. So you can look forward to reviews of them if you want. Right, ta-ra.